Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me. Yeah, why would you bet on Goliath when we got Bet David? Valuetainment, giving values contagious. This world of entrepreneurs, we get no value to haters. How they run, homie, look what I become. I'm the one.
Okay, so today's podcast will be about whether the population growing is an issue or underpopulation. Like a lot of people are sitting there saying, well, you know, this whole concept about the way the population is growing is a very big concern. There are some data that were saying that by 2100, we will flatline and the population will no longer grow. And there are some people that are wondering whether India is going to pass up China. We have a lot of different things to talk about. We have the right person in house. Second time with us on the podcast, Marian Tupy, who has got a new book called Super Abundance. He's got very interesting ideas and thoughts and a lot of good research here. Born in Czech, grew up in South Africa, went to school in UK, and today he's in DC. And he's a diehard LeBron James fan, which we'll maybe talk about later on today. That was a joke, the last part. It's good to have you on, man. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you.
We are as well, man. We're excited to have you here. So look, when I think about here, senior policy analyst, Center for Global Liberty and Prosperity, Cato Institute editor, humanprogress.org. And then you turn on the news right now, which hopefully we'll get into some of these stories. What we saw happen this week, this has been a very weird week, by the
100%.
way, like to say the least. What happened with the trains in Palestine, Ohio? Let's just make that the basis, Palestine, Ohio. What happened with the trains in South Carolina? And now yesterday, I believe, Houston. Then you have the Starlink seeing the things that it saw over Japan. You know, then you have the balloons, the first one that they took their time. And then the second balloon, the third balloon. Matter of fact, I think the fifth one made it here, right?
I think no matter where you go, I'm not joking. Like, it's just, it's ridiculous.
You're not even holding on to it.
And nobody, it's getting annoying, but nobody is, I don't even think that they're not balloons at this point.
At this point, listen, the way they're shooting it down, they're probably going to be in here shooting it down.
They're going to hit it with a burner gun. That would have been sick.
So anyways, but going to you, you know, your background, what you've done, if you don't mind taking 30 seconds, sharing with the audience your background, and then let's get into your ideas of why you think we shouldn't be concerned with the population growing the way that it is. Or maybe we should be, but go ahead.
So I think that it all started with growing up under communism.
Well, if you can get closer to the mic. Yeah.
Absolutely. So growing up under communism, then coming to the capitalist West and realizing that, different regimes and different countries have different sets of political and economic arrangements. And so I was always interested in what makes countries rich and what makes countries poor. And then given I only have 30 seconds, what happened then was that I realized that there's this new growing green religion, which talks about human beings as being, basically a cancer on the planet. And I believe in the exact opposite. I think that the more people we have, provided that they are free, so they can exercise their minds, their thinking, can invest in the market, benefit from it, profit from it, that actually having more people in the world is better because we create more economic growth and more prosperity for everyone.
That's interesting you're saying that. So I know I said 30 seconds. I want you to feel more comfortable going because it is a long-form podcast. Yeah. But, so for me, being where I grew up and where I'm at now, it's very important for us to know, like it was always wanting to find out how does one become rich? Can everybody become rich? What are the principles that help somebody become rich? So for you, coming from the Czech background, when I lived in Germany, there was a lot of folks from Czechoslovakia in '89 that were escaping. A family that was very close to me, the Staff family, Jan and Katarina Staff, the specifically family that I remember. And they would tell me stories about what it was like there. So for you, what conditions and climate helps people become rich, and the same as helps some people become poor?
Well, not everybody can become wealthy. Everybody can become successful. You can only work with whatever God-given talents / DNA you have. But the first prerequisite for having at least a shot at being successful and rich is that you have to live in a country where you have basically the freedom both political and economic freedom. What do I mean by political? Well, freedom of speech, for example, is incredibly important. To be able to interact with people like you, exchanging ideas, learning from each other, maybe innovating something together, then applying those ideas in the marketplace, and if it works, then of course profiting. Now, that only works under some form of a free market system. If you are in North Korea, it doesn't really matter what great ideas you have. You cannot implement them. First, you cannot vocalize them because you have a complete ban on free speech, but also you cannot really implement them in practice. There is no market where you can succeed with your ideas or your innovations. So I would say that free market over time has proven to be the best way in order to generate economic growth. And it's not just capitalism in the way that we understand it over the last 300 years, but even if you look at the past, it's localities that have allowed for greater openness, where the government took its boot off the necks of ordinary people, where people were able to flourish and become rich. That includes Song China in 12th century AD, an incredibly sophisticated and wealthy societies. And then when the Ming come in, basically they have 800 years of stagnation simply because the government changes and they change the political and economic ideas and institutions that they have. Similarly in, say for example, in ancient Rome, 2nd century, very high level of stability, which then gets replaced by obviously the collapse of the Roman Empire and Dark Ages. So you can have these efflorescences of economic growth, but they usually peter out because politics change and whatever. And my big concern about the United States right now is that I would like us not to be one of those countries where we have a sort of a 200-year period of high economic growth and then suddenly everything stops and we have stagnation for the next 500 years.
By the way, if you look at stats, which countries have grown the fastest over the last, I'm sure there's data on this, the last 50 years? I know India slowed down ever since they came up with their one-child policy.
No, China.
China slowed down. India keeps making babies. The average age right now in China is 38.4. I think we're 36.4. I think India is 26 or 27 years old. They're very young, and if they haven't already passed up China in population, they're about to. But what countries are you seeing where the level of population growing exponentially is matching innovation, and which ones are you seeing that where the population grows, innovation is declining? What trends are you noticing?
Well, I would say that economic growth is really a combination of population and freedom. So you don't have to have a growing population necessarily if you're compensating for it with higher degree of economic freedom. So China starts to liberalize after 1978, and they have a very high economic growth rate. In fact, they are the most successful economy over the last, say, 40 years. 58
or 68?
1978. China sort of drops hardcore communism. I mean, it takes time for them to liberalize in more areas. But the point is that during the 1980s and the 1990s, for the last 40 years, China has been growing quite rapidly, even though they did have the one-child policy. Now, my argument would be that if they didn't have the one-child policy, they would be growing even faster. India also has succeeded a great deal, partly because they started liberalizing. They started having a more capitalist system after 1991 reforms. And India has never implemented the kinds of draconian anti-population policies that China has. So those are two success stories. Ireland is another success story. The great disappointment over the last 30 years at least must be Japan, which has basically stagnated, but also many countries in Western Europe. Italy hasn't seen growth in the last 20 years, and places like that.
How has Italy not seen growth? They're some of the most attractive people in the world. They should be making babies.
Left and right.
Like I would assume, like when you're like Italian, stallion, you're thinking Sly, all these attractive people. For them to have that kind of emotional control, Vinny, it's got to be patriotic. To not, right?
To just
okay. So can you pull up the data I just sent you? Pull up the data I just sent you. The link I just sent you, where it shows countries whose population has grown the most. Can you go up so we can have actually the leaders bulletin? I don't know if the link I just sent you shows me a leaders bulletin. Do you see?
Actually, the map is quite telling. If you look at the map, you see that Africa is the darkest, has the darkest hue of the color on the map, and that's because Africa is still growing. In fact, Sub-Saharan Africa is the only region in the world where women have more babies than is necessary for replacement level. Replacement level is 2.1 children per woman per lifetime, and pretty much everywhere else in the world.
Can you explain that? 2.1?
Children per woman per lifetime. That's the replacement level. If you want to keep population stable, you need on average 2.1 children per woman.
We spoke about that last time.
Yeah, and as you can see, pretty much nowhere else in the world do you have a growing population except in Sub-Saharan Africa. So the question there is, why is Sub-Saharan Africa, even in spite of its growing population, not generating a lot of economic growth? And the answer is because they are generally not free. If you grow up in the slums of
Marian, get a little closer.
If you grow up in the slums of Lagos, for example, you could be a genius kid, but there is simply very little that you can do with your life. You're probably going to get a crappy education. You're probably never going to be able to go to university or implement your ideas in the marketplace because you don't have the capital or whatever. So once again, I emphasize that growth, economic growth, prosperity is an outcome of population times freedom.
So is there any correlation between lack of technology for, which country like if I look at this, statistics from 2012 to 2021, you see what countries have grown their population the most, okay? Iraq, very interesting, not sure why, 37%, okay? Go a little lower. Chad, Somalia, Benin, Maldives, Uganda, 33%, Kuwait, 27%, Afghanistan. Why are they increasing at the levels that they're increasing? Qatar, a lot of these are Muslim nations, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Israel, 18.37%, Philippines, 17%, Iran, 16%.
That's population, Pat?
Growth from 2012 to 2021 on them growing the most. Turkey, by the way, again, a lot of these are Muslim nations. Keep going to see where we go. India, 11.2%, Canada, 10.7%, Costa Rica, 9.94%, Switzerland, 8.84%, Ireland, right there. Mexico, 8%. Norway's pretty much 8%. Brazil, 7.5%. U.S.'s population has grown 5.74% since 2012. We're ahead of UK. But keep going. I'm trying to see if anybody... Okay, China's 4.3%. They're seeming to have a net negative population in 2022. Some of the numbers that I saw, people that are fleeing and leaving. Spain, okay, now we have negative, which you were talking about Italy. Minus 0.72 in the last 10 years. Japan, minus 1.53. Armenia, 3.23. Greece is down 4%. Romania is down 5%. Keep going. Croatia's down 9%. Puerto Rico's down 10%. And then you have at the bottom Marshall Islands. Okay, Puerto Rico, St. Martin. So when you look at this core, is there anything that says why Muslim nations are growing faster than others? Is there anything we know about that or no?
I actually don't know.
It's in the religion, in the Quran, that Muhammad said for them to spread out as much as they can, because their average, I think, is 3 kids, but the majority of the Muslims that we see are like 4 or 5 kids. But it's a religious thing where in the Quran it says to be flourish and as many kids as you.
Okay, so let's kind of see if we can come up with something. So one, to me, you just said is religion.
100%, it's in the Quran. So if 100%.
We put religion as one, can we put culture as, because even Mormonism, right? Like
100%.
Mormons,
yeah.
The moment you have 5 kids, people ask if you're a Mormon.
100%.
At 4, they think you're still maybe
you might
Hispanic.
be a Christian, yeah.
But at 5, they ask if you're
They're
Mormon.
like, wait a minute, are you?
Yeah, I get
asked. Read the book.
I get asked if I'm Hispanic, but
100%.
I know if you draw the line at 5.
Yeah.
We're from Bountiful, Utah.
Yeah.
So religion, we have culture. Do you notice that the less there is technology, advancement, distractions, more babies are being born? Is there a correlation between that? Like, how back in the days people would say, well, we had 11 kids, but because we had no TV.
There's certainly a correlation between being a rich country and having fewer babies, partly because most rich countries also have a very high percentage of women who are in who are in the workforce, staying at home, taking care of children has a much higher opportunity cost than going and work in the marketplace. So let's say that a woman becomes a banker and can bring in $250,000 or $500,000 a year home. Staying at home, basically, and taking care of children means that the cost is between $250,000 and $500,000, right? Whereas if you are a woman, say, for example, in an African village, and you are not really a part of the official workforce, but you still work, obviously. I mean, you work at home, you're a homemaker or whatever, but you're not actually bringing in any monetary income, then the household is not suffering that kind of opportunity cost.
You know what else I'd want to know? I'd want to also know which countries in the world lead in abortion. Is there a way to pull up this data?
Pretty sure it's going to be
Which countries in the world lead in abortion? Like, what are abortion laws in, if we can just pull up leading, what is that? Top 10 countries with the highest abortion rates annual per 1,000 women. Wow. So, yeah, at the top is Russia.
Russia, wow.
Interesting. 53.7 out of... But that's 04. That's a lot has happened since 2004.
Yeah, but just top 10 countries, even though it's 2004, look at the stark difference between 1 and 2.
Oh yeah, no, ridiculous.
Can you scroll in on that a little bit?
Vietnam and Russia.
You know, it's not even close.
I want to know who has the least. I guarantee you it's going to be a lot.
10.
I bet you Mexico is going to be the number one that does not.
So go to the bottom. Let's see if the bottom shows the opposite. 10 countries with the lowest.
Mexicans are not having abortions, bro. They're just like, no. We're good.
Oh. That's pretty wild.
That's dope. I told you I said
0.1%. Like I told you, your expertise is AI and abortion. So
Vinny's moving to Mexico.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
can we get into these numbers a little bit?
Yeah.
Where were you going with this, with the abortion issue?
I'm trying to see the areas that are growing with more kids. So his argument was that women, higher education, they not only don't want to have more kids, they can't have more kids if you want to make your career a priority over maybe other places where you're working, but you're working for different reasons. Here it's more to want to compete. So women is one. What else would be the reason for some of these countries' population to be growing as fast as they are and some that are not? But go ahead. You seem to have a question.
Well, the Russia thing just throws me for a loop here. I didn't want to go down the abortion alley over here, but that very interesting how much Russia is leading the world in abortion. Do you have any rhyme or reason for that?
You know, all of these things, whether countries are growing, whether they are not, whether the population is declining, how many abortions they have, they can have many different causes. And I don't think that we quite know exactly how they all interact with each other. But Russia is a country which has had a problem with basically having a very negative view of the future. This has been a case since really the 1970s. Really? Russians have been suffering from the problem of alcoholism for a very long time, dying early. So there's a lot of stuff with depression and basically not seeing Russia as a place that is going anywhere. Now, one possibility is that you are not having children partly because of economic uncertainties, but also partly because life generally is tough, and a lot of Russians just don't see a future for that country, as opposed to, for example, Israel. Israel, the interesting thing about Israel is that it is a wealthy country, but women, even though they are highly educated and they are working, still keep on having children above the replacement level. And that's not just the Orthodox Jews, but also secular Jews. Mm-hmm. And one possible explanation that I've come across is that because Israel has been growing so fast and has had such a positive attitude about its future for the last 20 or 30 years, that people feel, I can have a third baby because the likelihood is that my income in 10 years' time is going to be much higher than it is right now. Now, that is not the kind of calculation that you can make in Russia or in Italy, for that matter.
Interesting. Well, in Israel, I would assume that has a lot to do with tradition, culture, economic freedom, being free. You know, there's the book Startup Nation about the miracle that is the state of Israel. Essentially, it leads to your point right there.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick has already written down that, it's that there are cultural aspects to this and religious aspects to it. So for the Orthodox Jews, it's obvious why they want to have.
Yeah, they're competing with our friends, the Mormons. They might be winning.
But culture, the general perception of how the country is doing and where it's heading, can have, I think, an impact on how many.
Speaking of, what you alluded to with Russia, this outlook of negativity, like looking into the future and not being able to see yourself having a good life. I actually want to hone in on what's going on in America today, because as you're saying these stats, right? It comes down to political and economic and socioeconomic, and you see these numbers. Rob, I slacked you something. If you could, the amount or the share of generation who is proud to be American is falling off a cliff. It's actually insane. And it's something that I actually feel very deeply about. If you look here, the net shares of each generation who say they are proud to live in the United States, baby boomers who are essentially our parents, in their 60s, 70s, 73% are proud to live in the United States. Gen X, who are in their 40s and 50s, 54%. And then it reaches below the 50% threshold when you get to millennials, 36%. And Gen Z, 16%. You're talking teenagers and 20-something-year-olds who are abundantly not proud to live in the United States. And as you're saying these stories about, all right, economic freedom, check. Okay, say whatever you want for the most part.
100%.
Check. I'm wondering, where did this shame come from based on your findings? Why young people in America are not proud to be American? This is something that deeply, deeply bothers me.
So once again, I think there are probably a lot of causes at play. I want to talk about one or two of them, but before I do that, let's get the numbers right. So right now, native-born American women have about 1.7 children per woman per lifetime, and again, you need 2.1.
That 2.1 to replace yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's mostly immigration which is still driving our population forward. So America is still growing in terms of its population. We are not shrinking like the Japanese, for example, but it's mostly driven by non-native American women who are having more children than
immigrants.
Okay. Now, possibly, I think one of the reasons that is sort of in my mind is that I do meet a lot of young people. And part of the reason why they feel so bad about America is because they're actually deeply ignorant about the rest of the world. There is very little understanding amongst the young about just how rich Americans are vis-a-vis the rest of the world. Now, I understand that income is not the only thing which matters. But still, in spite of all of our problems, 9/11, financial crisis, COVID, etc., we are the richest generation in the whole history of the United States. We are much richer than our ancestors were. And not just that, Americans are much richer relative to the second most developed part of the world, which is Western Europe. Even middle-income America, I mean, if the Western European income, if you compare it to the American states, to the 50 states, it would be on par with Louisiana and Mississippi, the poorest states in the Union. Those are the average incomes.
How do you calculate that? What formula did they use to define that?
I think this would be GDP per capita.
Okay.
As far as I recall, I saw it online a number of times from reputable sources. I think one of them was Timbro, which is a Swedish think tank. The reality is that here in the United States, Mississippi and Louisiana are the poorest states in the Union. And if you go to the richest, they are roughly twice as rich as the poorest states in the Union.
California, New York.
New York. And Western Europe is on the level of America's poorest states.
Again, so let's go back. So what causes people to keep having kids? What causes people to stop having kids? So aside from a law mandated by the government like China, let's set that aside. That's a law. We can't do nothing about a law, right? This is depressing to look at this. It's very disappointing to see how Gen Z feels about their, how patriotic they are. But I'm not surprised. Gen Z spends the most time with teachers. And by the way, I'm going to tell you the craziest data about teachers. I'll tell you the craziest data about teachers here. We just got the statistic this last week based on a research we were doing with Kai. Do you know what percent? And they got this data exactly on how people gave money, contributed towards their political party. What percentage of Hollywood do you think votes Democrat?
90%.
It's exactly 90-10. What percentage of professors in universities are Democrat to Republican?
90 Democrats.
I would say more than
For every one conservative, how many Democrats are there?
13.
12.
12?
It's 1 to 12. It used to be, it's 1 to 12, 1 to 13.
So you're
There's
talking 94%.
Exactly. So 1 to 12 is, that's a full-on monopoly. All these
I
people are
was
worried
gonna
about
say,
monopoly. There's no
that's
bigger
a
monopoly
monopoly
than this one.
Yeah.
But watch this one here. So when you think about Gen Z, who do they spend the most time with? English teachers. What percentage of English teachers are Democrats? English teachers in K through 12.
99%.
97%.
Holy shit.
What percentage of health teachers are Democrats? Health teachers in school. Health and guidance.
I'm going to say 95.
99%. They're the
Oh
highest.
my
English
God.
teachers are 97. Health is 99%. Here's a little one that they have a little bit of reason. Science and math. What percentage are Democrats? Remember, this requires logic.
I'll just say 50.
87% to 13%. Okay, so 97 is English, 99 is health, 87 is math and science. And Gen Zs are spending time around them nonstop. Hence, you're going to be thinking like they do. So I am not surprised at all. They're being convinced that America sucks and America's bad and America's this and get one of the benefits about having YouTube and access to different channels where you can kind of brainwash yourself out of the insanity stuff you've learned. You almost need to unlearn the crap that they've learned. But let me go back. This is what I'm interested in. So to me, what I'm looking for is formulas. Okay, what is a formula for happy marriage?
Adam, take notes.
Are you married? Okay, but let's just kind of talk about it.
Rob,
what have we heard? What is the formula for happy marriage?
don't lie to each other. Be honest with each other. Respect each other.
Okay, so women want to be loved, men want to be respected.
Yeah.
So don't publicly humiliate your husband.
Yeah, have a good job. Be successful. Don't be broke.
So finances is another one where there's not a lot of financial issues.
Faithful.
Faithful, which is you're being faithful to each other. Maybe there is faith involved. You're going to you're practicing some 100%. Kind of a whatever church or denomination you have. What else would you say is the cause of a long-lasting marriage?
Effective communication.
Maybe common values and principles.
The children.
Maybe you're having sex at least once a week. And I know this statistics. I'm interested in statistics.
Yeah.
You know what I just launched in PHP 2 years ago? A couple came up to me. We were sitting down having a meeting together. And I noticed a trend with a few couples who had been married this was couples that were married for 10 plus years. So many people started telling me that they don't have sex but once a month. And I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. In our business, we have something called a perfect week. A perfect week is when that week you make a certain number of calls, a certain number of prospects, a certain number of appointments, a certain number of sales you do in a week. The new perfect week I added is a date night at least once a week, and you have sex at least once a week. We've added this. I said, treat your marriage as a perfect week. One date night, sex at least once a week. You'd be amazed how many people Sunday night at 11:59 are getting it on. Like, babe, we got to get our perfect week.
Like the to-do list. She's like, oh shit,
hurry
Pat
up,
said,
get it done.
Pat,
We are
let's
covering
go.
the topics that are essential.
But the reason why I'm asking this, as funny as this sounds and as like ludicrous this sounds, this is based on a lot of conversations you have with people. And if you're not having sex in marriage for more than a month, something's going on in that marriage. Someone's not happy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So you go to, success formulas for me having $1 million in my bank account. I don't know, set aside $300 a month at 12% over 30 years or 40 years, you're going to have $1 million. Okay. What else? You do $1,000 a month at 12% over 21 years, you got $1 million in your account, right? If you can set aside $1,000 a month at 12%. There are formulas. How do you get a raise at a company? How do you keep increasing your salary? How do you stay in shape? I want to know what formulas causes people to stop having kids and for people to have more kids. More kids, lack of education, does that equal more kids? Lack of, entertainment and advancement in technology, is that what causes more kids? Is it cultural expectation of hey, in our community, in our religion, you can have as many kids as you want, 5, 6, 7, 8 kids. What is it? Okay, and then like the number that we have, that's 2.1. I like that because we have a number to go off of, that we're at least growing our population. I'm more interested to see what trends do we notice with some countries that are growing and declining. What is it? Why is that happening?
I really do think in the Muslim nations, in the Quran, it does say children are a gift from God, and they just and I know Muslim guys that have. I know a guy. One of my boys has 5 kids, and their attitude is just flood the world as much as us as we can. So we'll be a voice to be heard. And I mean, dude, it's happening. The majority of Muslim men that I know have at least 3 kids, at least average.
And the same, I believe, in Judaism, the insistence that children are a blessing. Now, so I don't have the formula. What I can tell you, and what we address in the book, is that in the West, we are embracing the anti-formula. Not that children are a blessing from God, higher power, whatever, but that children are a curse upon the world, that humanity is a cancer upon the world, that to bring a child into the world is an act of ultimate selfishness. Let's say that you are a young and impressionable young person reading the New York Times, Washington Post, or The Atlantic. What are the stories that you would have encountered over the last 6 months? Having children is selfish. Children will consume or will produce more CO2 into the atmosphere during their lifetime than 5 trucks or whatever. And what we found was that actually public opinion polls are beginning to reflect this kind of apocalyptic vision of the future, where increasing numbers of men and women around the world, but primarily in the West, are saying we cannot bring a child into the world because the world is going to end. Famously, AOC said 4 years ago, it would end in 12. That the world is getting worse, which is another falsehood. Now, it doesn't mean that the world doesn't have problems. The world has God knows how many problems. But compared to when you compared us to 20, 50, 200 years ago, the world is in much better shape. Yet somehow people have this notion that the world is getting worse, it is going to end, we are going to run out of resources, we are going to despoil the planet is going to explode, everything. And so increasingly people are saying we cannot bring a child into the world that is about to end. And so the point
you think people are thinking about that?
Well, they say so explicitly. It's in the book. We point to opinion polls that show that people really believe that we are heading towards some sort of a planetary catastrophe.
So, Marian, what do you tell those people that are saying? Because like right now, I think we're at 7,900,000 and growing. When it comes,
we crossed 8 billion in November of last year. Officially.
You didn't get the update?
I didn't get the email or the balloon, whatever. So, but hey, Marian, what do you tell these people that are they're concerned about all the natural resources that we do have? So, are you saying with that growth comes all the stuff like, you know, the fake meat that they're making, you know, eat bugs? Like, are you saying that there's enough natural resources here that we could flourish no matter how high this number is going to get?
Oh, absolutely. There is plenty to go around. And when shortages do occur within the market mechanism, you can always produce more. We produce much more wheat per acre of land than our ancestors could. That is why we are able to feed 8 billion people around the world. Have you noticed that in spite of all of this population growth, so let's start with the numbers. 1800, Thomas Jefferson is president of the United States. There is 1 billion people in the world. Today, Biden is president, for better and for worse. There is 8 billion people in the world. And yet we are able to feed on all of these people. And actually, we are beginning to take some of the land which we used for agriculture, and we are beginning to return it to nature, to animals and to flora. How do we do that? We increase wheat production or yield on 1 acre of land. This is how you do it. If you're running out of fish, we are currently running out of fish in the wild. Much of the ocean is becoming depopulated of fish. What do? You turn to aquaculture. You start breeding fish in ponds. 50% of all of our fish consumption now is fish grown specifically for the purpose of being eaten, so we don't catch them in the wild, and hopefully we can get to 100%. Should at some point in the future, should it happen that I don't know, we are going to somehow run out of cattle or chicken. Well, we are just going to grow cells of chicken or beef in huge vats, vats of liquid, and we are going to produce food that way. It's not going to be impossible food. This is actually going to be, you'll be eating a steak.
Actual steak.
Yeah, it just happened to be grown from a cell of probably a fantastic cow.
Yeah.
So all of those listeners out there who always wanted to eat a Wagyu steak but cannot afford it because it costs $300, one day we'll be able to take the genes or the cells from the best cows in the world, maybe the ones from Japan, and everybody will have a steak for $5 or $10.
I can't wait.
So that's what I'm saying. Is that the amount of resources in the world is only subject to human knowledge. It's human knowledge that matters because we can always create more. We can grow more.
Is your contention that with population growth, we're at 8 billion, we were at 1 billion
in 1800
200 years ago plus, that the more people, the more minds there are, the more technological advancements will come of it, the more, you get smarter, more efficient, more innovative, and better things will happen because there's more people, not despite it.
That is the fundamental premise of the book. So the thing to remember is that not everybody can be an inventor or an innovator. Only a small fraction of humans will ever invent or innovate anything. It's in single digits. It's probably around 5 or 6%.
But everyone reaps the benefits of those innovations.
Like Elon Musk.
Precisely. Yeah. I mean, I wish to God that we could have 8 billion Elon Musks.
Oh my God.
The world would look very different, but we don't. But my point is that 6% out of a population of 300 million people who lived at the time of Christ or Caesar Augustus, really the world's population was 300 million, or 6% of 1 billion people who lived at the time of Jefferson is a still much smaller total number than if you have a population of 8 billion people. So if that fraction of humans who innovate stays the same, then obviously you're going to have many more people like that in a population of 8 billion. And it is these people who have, it's only human mind currently that can produce new ideas. It is new ideas that you can turn into inventions. Then those inventions get tested in the marketplace to separate bad inventions from good inventions. The VHS from Betamax, and the Diet Coke from Crystal Coke or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I remember that.
The Trabant from a Ferrari. And you will end up basically with innovations that increase productivity, human productivity, and therefore our standards of living.
I want to go back to what Pat sort of questioned you on was about whether it's the media, whether it's politicians, whoever it is, mainstream media, that is trying to convince people not to have kids. What I want to kind of hone in on is America and Western civilizations. I want to know what percentage is white college-educated women who are basically saying, I'm done with having kids. This dream of being a mother, a housewife, a homemaker it's not for me. I just want to work and make money. And then that is leading to sort of population decline. Can you hone in on that?
So I don't know the numbers because the studies that I have seen, the public opinion polls, have not been broken down by race or political persuasion.
Just go with your gut on this.
No, but what I can tell you is that the richer the society becomes, the higher you go up the Maslow hierarchy of needs. At the bottom you have your clothing, your food, your water, your security, and at the top you have self-actualization. And basically what tends to happen is that it is in societies where people are extremely rich, and again, we are extremely rich by historical standards, where people have all this time and all this money to basically devote themselves to pet projects, such as I want to live in the United States where all the plastic is banned, or I want to transform the United States into a society where there are no guns, or where there are abortions, and things like that. The point is, people have all this time and all of these resources to pursue their pet project. Now, the pet project can be good, the pet project can be bad, but it's only rich people who have this amount of time to do that.
Yeah. Can you pull up Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Hierarchy of needs.
So
yeah.
it's very interesting because I want to get your opinion on essentially what you said. I interviewed this. You familiar with the Freedom Forum? It's by Gary Kasparov.
Yes.
Okay, so I was invited there via Pat a year and a half ago, and I interviewed who is essentially forgive me, I forgot his name. He basically hosts The Daily Show, but of Iraq.
Oh, really? He's
a comedian, humorist, satire. And I said, what's your biggest wish for the people of Iraq? And, you would assume, living under no fear and tyrannical governments. And he says, my wish is for them to just come home every night and watch reality TV, and that be the biggest thing on their mind. I said, what? What are you talking about? He says, do you understand how lucky you are in America to go to your job, to work, to just live your life, do what you want to do, and come home and have the freedom to just watch meaningless dribble on TV because you're not concerned that a bomb is coming over your head, that someone in your family is going to get dragged out of the house for having dissenting political views, and just you're not, scraping by for food, water, shelter, any of the basic human needs on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And he goes, my wish is for the people of Iraq to just watch the Kardashians mind-numbingly mindless.
Yeah.
But he goes, unfortunately, we can't do that. Life's tough. And that was such a stark example of like, holy shit, that's where we're at in America today. We have life is so easy. It's so good that our biggest issue is like whether Chloe lost 4 pounds today on the Kardashians, if you even know who that is.
Rihanna's pregnant or not.
Or Rihanna's pregnant, whatever it is. And it's just, things are so good here in the West, in America, that it's almost manifesting like things are so bad because we have so much time to focus on minor things that don't affect day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Is that essentially your premise?
Yes, and it gets a little bit worse than that, and in a sense that, you see, at the top of the pyramid, things are only zero-sum. At the bottom of the pyramid, if you have freedom, if you have people, they are going to provide for water, food, shelter through normal market mechanism, right? We have sort of tackled that particular that level at the of the Maslow pyramid of needs back in maybe like the 40s or the 50s. But again, the market can provide more food, more shelter, more sleep, innovation, growth, etc. But at the top of the pyramid, the problem with self-actualization, where it becomes zero-sum, is that your idea what a perfect society may be in direct conflict with mine.
Yeah.
So maybe you're prioritizing equality of outcome over my prioritization of liberty and the ability to succeed or fail within the market system. And so when we are at the top of the pyramid and you insist that everybody should have equality of outcome, that affects me negatively immediately because it means that I have to forego something if I'm better off than you are. And that's what leads to social conflict. I think that's part of the reason why we are at each other's throats, is because we are all at the top of the pyramid, but we have very different ideas about how the world should be structured.
In the West, because life is so easy.
Yeah, about how America should function.
By the way, Pat, what was, they do this sort of like debate. I don't know if it's in Cambridge or in Oxford, it's in the UK, and they had this comedian come on and basically sort of clown wokeness. Did you see this?
Yeah, Konstantin Kisin. He runs a podcast.
Okay.
Yeah,
you've seen
in UK.
this?
Yes, I have.
I don't know if you can pull that up, Rob. What a prime example of this. Because he basically, you talked about like bowing to the idol of greenness. What was the terminology you used just a little bit ago?
The green religion, yeah.
The green religion.
Eco-fanatics.
And he said, let me tell you why the climate change and the global catastrophe is nobody's gonna work on it. Can you go back to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs? And he basically said, you have literally billions of people in all around the world, India, China, third world countries, Africa, Middle East, who are still on the bottom level, who are still just fighting for air, water, food, shelter, all that. And here you are at the top of the pyramid, self-actualizing what a green new world would be.
That's right.
And he goes, it's never going to happen because you have billions of people just fighting for the basics of survival. Meanwhile, you're over here basically on your, iPad in your air-conditioned home, in your college education, and just sort of looking down on people because they won't take climate change as seriously as you when they're literally fighting for their basic needs and survival. And that was the guy's, I think his entire premise.
Kissing. So I would sort of divide the world into two parts. One is the developing or the underdeveloped world, and they are obviously not going to buy into the whole decarbonization of the economy. Wherever you stand on fossil fuels or green technology, the fact is we are going to need fossil fuels for many more years to come because they are the cheapest. And so the people who are still very poor, say most of Africa, most of Latin America, much of Asia, these people are going to be using those sorts of fuels.
More than half the world is what you're saying.
Well over half of the world. And then the other part of the world, the Western world, also generally tends to be democratic. And so what we are basically saying is that we are asking, or rather the Greens are asking us to democratically elect for us to be poorer, right? And I think that much of the conflict in the West right now has to do with the fact that in order to implement the green policies, all of us would have to suffer a great decline in our standards of living. And that's what's playing out already in places where the green agenda is most advanced, United Kingdom and Germany. People are washing themselves in lukewarm water because they cannot afford hot water. They cannot heat their homes in the middle of winter. Europe is much further ahead of where we are heading if we embrace the same policies, the same green policies. We are just going to be much poorer, or alternatively, we are going to elect governments that are going to behave in a very different fashion.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question about this, the book. How much research did you guys do with the book in regards to what religion has the most kids, which countries are the most optimistic, which states are growing and not growing within the states, what climates causes people to have more kids? Because some of the content that I'm looking at right now is contradictory. Did you go into looking at which religions are having most kids and why?
We didn't look. Okay. We didn't look at religion. The book is devoted specifically to answering the question whether more people are going to exhaust global resources.
Yeah, I guess I get that. And what I would want to know is so here's, I just sent you a bunch of links. So go to the abortion one that we looked at as well earlier. Which country you have the link up there, one of them, where it shows which one of the countries is having the most abortions today and who was at the top. By a mile, it was Russia. Then it was Vietnam, I think was number 2, and it wasn't even close. It was 53% to 32%. Go a little lower. Yeah, there you go. So Russia was at the top, 37. Vietnam was 35. And then you have a few different countries there. And then if you go lower, you'll see where U.S. is at. Go all the way to the bottom where you have the different list of countries. It should have U.S. there as well. Does it have it or no? If you go all the way to the bottom. I don't know. There you go. That's the list. Okay. 20.8%. So we're still up there. China has 24.2% of the population that's getting abortions. But we're still up there at 21%. China is forcing you to get an abortion. Wow. Here, we're not forcing you. You're choosing, and we're at 21%, right? Okay. So then I said, okay, why would Russia have abortion as high as they do? You said they're not optimistic about the future, right? To see like what the future looks like. Is the future bright or not? So because of that, they don't want to have the kids because they don't think it's a safe environment to have the kids, right? Then I went to the most optimistic country in the world. And if you go to that one, I sent you the link to that as well. You have it in the top right. Yeah, it's one of them that said, there you go. Zoom in on this one, which is kind of weird. Pessimism and optimism. Go zoom in just on that chart of Statista. Yeah, it shows that China, more things are getting better in the world than are getting worse. China is at the highest level, 86%. There's no way this data is accurate to show China is the most optimistic country in the world according to their data. But that's exactly what this is. It shows India is second, and it's Saudi Arabia, then it's Malaysia. Now look at the one at the top. Over the last year, the world has become more dangerous. People are more afraid. Colombia, 91%. Peru, 90%. South Korea, 88%. Look who's fourth. U.S. is 86%. Meaning U.S. is more pessimistic right now than optimistic right now. I'd love to see where Russia's on the leaders bulletin here, if you can even go to the bottom or not, to see if there is a Russia here or not on the bottom. And then it broke it down by this. Okay, zoom in a little bit to see where Russia's at with this. Russia's right there, -4%. So what's their score? If we're at 86, where do you see U.S. on that list? We're at the
Down
bottom.
towards the bottom, -1.
Yeah, -4. Okay, Russia's also -4. Okay, where we're at. But what does that mean? -4 of what, though? 34% gray. Some would agree. When you really think about it, more things are getting better in the world these days than are getting worse. Nope, Americans don't believe things are getting better. Chinese think things are getting better. Hence, they're at the top. Okay. So then I wanted to find out a little bit more about, if you go to the next one I sent you, which religion has the most kids? Okay. And the changing global religious landscape. Babies born in Muslims will begin to outnumber Christian births by 2035, okay?
Wow.
And people with no religion face a birth dearth, okay?
Great name.
Babies born to Muslims go 20. So show the data there. Show the data, go a little bit lower so we can see that. There you go. So Christians, red. Muslims, green. Christians are not having babies like they once were having, and Muslims are having more babies. So if this is from Pew Research, and you got to trust Pew Research, they're not on one side or the other. They're just going to give you the data that they have. They don't.
Just facts.
It's not CNN or Fox. So go a little lower to see if there's any more data to look at here. Go a little lower to see if we have anybody else. Okay, there you go. So let's look at this one here. Estimated shares of birth and deaths. Compared to with their share number of overall 2015 population, Christians make up the largest share of 2010. Deaths, Muslims, a largest share of births. Okay? Wow. If you look at that number, 31% to 21%, but Christians, there's more dying than being born. Muslims, they have 10% more being born than dying. And then if you look at the disparity by 2055 and 2060, okay, Muslim religion is going to get bigger than Christians in the world because Muslims are having more kids. If I'm a Christian leader at the top and I'm a leader of 1,000 churches, I'm probably having this conversation with my community. By the way, shout out to Mormons for having more kids.
Yeah.
They're growing their base more. I know this could be kind of funny, like we're being funny about it. I'm actually not.
Yeah.
I think if you really want to, your competition's having more kids than you are.
Yeah.
Okay? And there's going to be more population there to impose their way of thinking.
Of course.
And believing, and they're going to outnumber you.
Yep. Okay?
So Christians, hey, go make some babies today because that number is not looking good for you. Then go to the next one that I sent to you, which was what causes population to increase. By the way, this entire time while you guys are talking, I've been looking at this stuff. I'm actually really curious to know what the hell is going on here with this.
I'd like to revisit that optimism.
We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. So go and just Google the following. Just Google in another page. Google largest population of religion. You just put largest religion population. So all the way at the top, Christianity right now is what?
First place.
2.382. It ain't going to be there for too long.
No, it's not.
Muslims are 1.907. Which is 25%, and then you have the rest secular, and then you have Hindus on 1.161.
Hit more rows, Rob?
You trying to see Jews?
I'm just trying to see my people where we're at. I know that we're less
I don't
than
blame you.
1%.
Give him some recognition.
I don't know if you
It's
realize.
competition, y'all.
Right there, Judaism. Zoom
Try
in.
to wipe us out.
Zoom in. 14.7 million.
I don't know if you guys realize what Pat you made a really good point. Once that shift starts happening,
Game over.
it's the people don't think about it. I'm not saying good or bad thing, but this is a Christian country by a big percentage. The policies, the Judeo-Christian. But think about this: all the people, all the decisions, all the mayors, all the everything. Well, it's going to be a complete shift on the religion that runs, and you're going to see changes.
You know what's crazy? You know what's crazy? The average person's watching this right now. The average listener listening to this right now, they're like, "Oh, who cares about this?"
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't care about it. You're 42 years old.
Yeah.
You got your job. You're laughing. Maybe it's like, it's not a big deal. 40 years from now, you will see how different things will look. Mm-hmm. When you look at Congress, 30% of Congress are going to be Muslims, and 30% of senators, and then all of a sudden, U.S. has a Muslim president. Yeah. And then, hey, what's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with that.
Zero.
And now, and this isn't to fear that. This isn't to fear that. This is if you have a certain belief and you have a lot of pride in that, well, then show up and make some babies and raise some leaders and inject your philosophy into this, because Muslims get a shout out for absolutely doing that better than Christians are doing it right now.
The the stat that you just showed, was that for the world or the United States?
World population.
Okay, so I don't think that has a direct effect on the United States.
I disagree.
In a sense that our Muslim population would have to grow at an even faster rate than that, because most of our immigrants are actually coming to the country from other Christian nations, such as Catholics from Latin America.
Say that one more time.
Well, most of the immigration into the United States, most of the population growth is happening within the Hispanic community.
I totally get it. They've grown 24%.
Yeah.
Yes, 24%. But when you have a long-term thinking mindset and your opponent does not, it's just a matter of time until you infiltrate universities, until you infiltrate educational system, until you infiltrate school systems, until you infiltrate building churches, until you infiltrate politics, until you infiltrate media, until you they're already doing it right now anyways. And by the way, this isn't if you're Muslim and you're a leader of Islam, your kudos to you strategically. Christians are sitting on the sidelines being very casual about it, and it's almost like the competitor that thinks, it's not a big deal, they're never going to pass us up. Okay, brace for impact, because it's going to come very, very quickly. And when it hits you, the difference between Muslims and Christians is what? The other day, this what's his name, the football player who wore that jacket at Super Bowl. Did you see the jacket he wore mocking Jesus?
Yeah.
Did you see the jacket?
Who was it? Damar Hamlin.
Damar Hamlin.
Yeah.
The guy that
almost died on the field.
Yeah, and he was praying.
What?
Yeah, and the AOC said something about
he
it.
wears this jacket mocking Jesus, and
what is that?
Yeah, so he wears this jacket.
After he was praising Jesus.
Do you know who called him out? Adrian Peterson pulls him out and tweets about it and says, what kind of a thing are you wearing? And then there's stuff in football right now saying you should tell him that privately, you shouldn't tell him that publicly. Adrian Peterson's like, what are you doing?
But this is the guy that almost lost his life for the Bills?
The guy that was like
we should be freaking praying.
The guy that the first thing was, Lord loves me, and God was looking at me, and then he did that.
So, but here's the point, though. Here's what they're going to say, though. Someone's going to say, oh, grow up, guys. This is called art.
Yeah.
This is called art. Really? No problem. Why don't you do the same art in Prophet Muhammad, and let's see if you'll call that art as well and we're in the Super Bowl.
Never again.
Go ahead and do that. But here's the point. The point is Christians tend to be forgiven, and they say, let it slide. Muslims are not going to be forgiven and say, let it slide.
No.
So there is that standard and expectation where if somebody sits, let's just say you have two kids. One kid you joke with, he takes it. The other kid you joke with, he says, don't do that again. I don't like that when you do that in front of people, okay? Yeah. Guess whose standard you're going to step up to as a parent? The kid that tells you, don't make fun of me in front of my friends. Yeah. That's exactly what's happening here. One religion's like, it's okay, let it slide. The other religion's like, no, don't do it. So not only are they growing faster, they're more disciplined.
100%.
They believe more. They have higher standard and expectations of their members. There's a more disciplined way of what you need to do on a daily basis. Praying, the level of commitment to that religion is much higher.
100%.
So that's what they're injecting, and they're going to figure out a way to get into different communities. But here's the part. If you go to the article I sent you about Netherlands, I sent you an article about Netherlands, how they said why population grows and why it goes down. Did you see the one I sent you? This could be the one. It's got to be .nl. Yeah. This is the one. Okay.
Netherlands, yeah.
So I'm trying to find that. So causes and effects of population decline. When people move away from villages, only in Netherlands they use the word villages. We don't use that in America, but apparently they do villages. Jobs, schools, shops, and other facilities also disappear. The government needs to tackle the causes and effects of population decline. For instance, by cutting down on a number of new homes being built. What? Okay, so causes of population decline, go to the bottom. Here we go. Some of the demographic population. Fewer children are being born. Bingo. Families with children move to larger towns and cities. Okay. Young and better educated people move to larger towns and cities. Fine. So the current and projected population decline, look at the list it gives here. Go a little lower. It's got like 10 lists there right on the bottom. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. There you go. So let me read the top bullet to the top. Yeah, it says what? Effects of population. When young people move to bigger towns and cities, the average age of population, the place they leave behind automatically goes up. Very interesting. We just learned something. That makes sense. Let me read that one more time. When young people move to bigger towns and cities, the average age of the population, the place they left behind, automatically goes up. A community with a higher proportion of older inhabitants may be less attractive to businesses, which may additionally have difficulty finding suitable staff locally. Other effects of population decline include fewer schools due to there being fewer children, a drop in house prices because more homes are unoccupied, fewer new homes are being built. You're contradicting yourself. Less demand for rented accommodation, fewer care facilities, less turnover for shopkeepers and businesses, fewer sports facilities, fewer people going to theater, cinema, concerts, or the facilities are eventually cut back, fewer people traveling by public transport, and local residents have to travel further to reach the facilities they want. Obviously, we're not Netherlands, but they're leaving certain clues of what happens when people are moving to other cities and other places. The other day, when I was talking to Roland Martin, and he says, well, here's what's going on with these cities. And I said, why'd you leave your city? Everybody else is leaving, so I left. Okay, but you left behind. You're another high money maker that could have increased the, value of properties in that community, but you left, right? Mm-hmm. So what causes this? One of is how many babies we have. 2 could be our educational system, what the kids are being fed. 3 could be our religion. 4 could be what kind of immigrants are we attracting. The immigrants we're attracting to U.S. from South and Central America, thank God they make babies, right? Because they don't have a problem making babies. Maybe some immigrants that come in are not making babies. Maybe, by the way, it would be very interesting to even look at the data, Rob. I don't even know if we can pull this up, to see who makes the most babies in America. Like if we were to do Hispanic baby per family average versus whites versus blacks versus Middle Easterns versus Asians, I'd be so curious to know.
Or you can just put in birth rate by race in the United States.
Something like that. Rate by, there you go.
There we go.
Marion knows what he's talking about.
So let's see this year. That's percentage. I'd love to know percentage of birth.
The Latinos.
¿Qué pasó, man?
Yeah, but that's not given the right stats, though. That's given, of course, that number is going to be 52.1% that's white.
There's more white people.
Yeah, I want to know per. Of growth. I want to know per. I want to know per family. So instead of, what do we put? White race, birth rate. How would you put it, Marian?
Percentage.
This is your world. How would you put it?
You could try birth rate by race per 100,000.
Okay, that's better. Birth rate by race by 100,000. By the way, Marian is hired full-time researcher.
Yeah,
he's congratulations.
Offer's been made.
We can fire our friend Chat GPT if we'd like, or keep him.
Number of births, total fertility.
Their total fertility rate by ethnicity in 2020. Why don't you use that one?
What's your prediction here?
It's not even a prediction. I'm willing to tell you. I don't think whites are having that many kids per. What is it? Asians are 1.385
thousand women. Okay, interesting.
There you go. Hispanics 2.145, 1.41. Okay, Hispanics are 2.
No. What you're saying is Pacific Islander. They have the most, right?
Pacific Islanders number 1. Number 2 is Hispanic. Number 3 is blacks. You see, I told you whites are not having that many kids.
White people, step it up,
guys. Step it up.
By the way, I'm telling you, this is
Rob. Scroll in a little bit.
This seems like a regular thing. I'm telling you, whites are not having enough kids.
But you see who's last place here?
Asians.
The Asians.
Yeah.
Well, he was talking about like China.
They're not banging. This is in the United States.
Oh, that's the United States.
What's going on?
Well, I mean, it's in the culture. If it's
he talked about it. There's a major shrinkage issue going on there with. No, he said
there's a shrinkage in the population.
Well, it's kind of like Jerome Powell upstairs banging on the drum of the economy.
Shout out to Tom.
Interest rates,
BizDoc.
Interesting. So, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders having the most kids per capita, right? And then you have Hispanic, and then you have Black Americans, and then all sort of the median, And then the bottom tier are whites, non-Hispanic, American Indians, and then Asians, by far and away last place. What's the correlation there, Marian?
Well, I can only guess, and my guess would be that a lot of Asian women actually go to universities and get graduate and postgraduate degrees, and so you would expect their average age of having the first baby to be quite old.
Yeah, good point.
That would be my guess.
So the more educated you are, the more free you are, the lower your chances of wanting to have kids, be a family woman or a family person.
Early.
Or in general, period.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the later you start having children, the fewer you're going to end up with. And a lot of these couples, certainly I'm aware of a little bit about the Asian situation, would be people who would start having babies maybe even in their mid-30s. So by the time that you are advised not to have any more children, you may be 40 and you are able to only have one child.
So this may be sort of a naive question, but is it, I guess, bad for women to continue education?
Well,
because it seems like it's limiting growth.
My view
population-wise.
My view is that parents should have as many children as they want. What I don't want is for parental choices to be impacted by crazy millenarian cult of the apocalypse. This is the eco apocalypse that we are being told about every day. So there are many reasons for which people have babies, and there are many reasons for which people don't have babies. Women's choice is obviously quite important as well. But if we are going to commit civilizational suicide because we are being told that the world is going to end in 8 years and people shouldn't have babies, that I have a problem with, and that's what the book is dedicated to. It's just to remove one brick in the wall of a barrier against people having children.
This kind of opens up that dialogue of optimism versus pessimism.
Yeah.
If you would, I'm sure you've written a whole book about this. It would seem to me, and you have all the data, people are living longer, people are getting out of poverty, there's more drinking water, there's more supplies, there's more commodities. Like, the world is getting better. You know, life expectancy 100 years ago was 45, 50 years old, whatever it was. Now it's 75, 80. You know, I think, 100 years ago, 70% of the world was in dire poverty. Now it's less than 10%. You have all the stats.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you do your thing, but it seems to me the world is getting better and better and better and better. People are living longer. People are more prosperous. Yet there's this like fake narrative that we're all gonna die soon.
Yeah.
So extrapolate on that.
So let's get a few statistics. For as far back as we can tell, people earned $2 per person per day or less. That was the global average, or the productive equivalent thereof, about $2 per person per day. Today, globally, average daily income is $40 per person per day. Okay, and
so it went from 2 to 40 in how long?
In the last 200 years.
Okay,
right? Until about 1800. The world income was
Industrial Revolution.
pretty much stagnant at $2 per person per day. You can take it back 2,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, it would still be the same in the last 200 years. And that's the global average. Obviously, in the United States, we are much richer. Our income per day is something like $180 per person per day on average again. So again, in 1800, 90% of people live on $2 per person per day or less. Today, it's down to about 8 or 9%. As late as 1900, so the presidency of Theodore Roosevelt, in the richest countries in the world, life expectancy was 50 years. Today, around the world, it's 72 years. In the United States, it's 78 years, and in some countries, it's even higher. Roughly half of babies who were born died in infancy before the age of 1 or before the age of 5.
Half of all babies would die.
Up to half of newborns.
That was in what year?
Well, 1700s
Okay.
in Sweden, for example, we have very good records for Sweden. So between 1/3 and a half, but there could be years in which half of newborns.
Yeah. And what's that number today around the world globally?
Well, in the most developed countries, it would be in low single digits. Let's say around 2 to 5%. Now, that's not just because of lack of care. I mean, kids come into the world with all sorts of, some kids with all sorts of defects, and they die, unfortunately. But it's much, much lower. So that was the world before, and I think that part of the reason for this tremendous amount of negativity about the future of America and the Western civilization is not just this green apocalypse that we are being told about every day, but also that nobody is singing the praises of the American experiment or the Western experiment overall. Right now in the United States, we don't really have a constituency praising the United States. I'll tell you why. It may be counterintuitive, but I think, you see, when you have a Republican in charge, all the Democrats say the world is going to end. This is the worst thing that could have happened. He's the new Hitler. But the same thing, oddly enough, happens when you have a Democrat in charge. Is the Republicans say the country is in permanent decline. Look at this joker in charge. He's obviously senile. Country has never been worse off. So the point is that in order to get people excited about voting, is to piss them off, is to make them angry. And the only way you can do it is by saying everything is going to hell. And both parties do that. Nobody is saying that the country is doing well.
Ever.
Ever.
Is that unique to America, or is that just a political agenda in all countries?
I'm most familiar with the United States and this political polarization where you cannot admit that the other party is doing even 1% right.
Right.
That I think is specifically unique to us, right? The other things that are happening, of course, you've got the rise of the CRT and attacks on free speech, and part of the critical race theory business is that it attacks the founding of the United States. America is very different from Western Europe or from Europe, where I'm from. In Western Europe or in Europe, in order to become a member of the tribe, so to speak, you have to be born into that nation. You have to be born Czech, or you have to be born Slovak, or you have to be born German to be properly understood as that. But in the United States, we don't work like that. We have our constitution, right? We do not have kings, queens. We don't even have that long a history, but we do have the constitution and the founding documents and the founding fathers. And right now in the United States, what we are seeing is a concentrated attack on everything that until 2 seconds ago was considered to be somewhat sacred, which is to say the founding and the revolution. 1619 project versus the 1776 project is a perfect example of that. So you basically no longer, if people ask you, well, then what was the good part of America? You cannot actually say, because in every part of our American history, there has always been somebody who was not doing terribly well, or somebody who was discriminated against, or whatever. So on that basis, we can really no longer say that anything in America works, because it is tainted by this history that the CRT put at the center of its philosophy.
Are you saying that you're not willing to make America great again?
I'm saying that America was great, is great, and can be even greater.
I love that.
This lack of patriotism, right? I think an issue that I have with the Democratic side of the aisle is if you see a flag over someone's house,
yes,
or on their bumper sticker, or someone wearing an American flag hat,
yes,
what political party would you most likely affiliate?
You assume they are Republican because
you would assume they're
Democrats
Republican,
do that, yeah,
because they have an American flag.
Yeah,
that to me is ludicrous.
And
because there seems to be a large contingency on the left, the far left, who genuinely hates the concept of America, the 1619 project.
My point would be the only way you can hate America is if your diet of news or whatever you are reading or learning only focuses on the bad things in American history. But of course, every country in the world has some sort of a terrible past. Every civilization in world history had slavery, for example. I mean, this is a topic that Americans talk about more than anything else. And the reality is that it's always been there. And until 200 years ago, it never occurred to anybody that you could have. There was not a sustained movement anywhere in the world for the abolishment of slavery until Britain in late 1700s. So I think it is quite wrong to to focus just on that, as opposed to all the good things that America has done, including providing very high standards of living for the people of all colors.
But
and immigrants like me.
But you have to agree, though, that anti-flag American sentiment, I did not see it until 6 years ago. As a veteran, as a proud American, as you know, my whole family served in the military. Pat's a veteran. I didn't start seeing that at all ever until Trump was in, and the flag in America, they had to do the opposite of whatever Trump was saying, and that's where that started. That looking at flag, that what are you so proud of? We come from slavery, and this country is shit. And that's why all those gens, whatever, what was it, the
Gen
Z,
yeah.
They've been bombarded with, hey, this country hates you, we come from shit, and America's not great.
No doubt a large part of it was Trump. I think it was in prior with Obama, but a lot of it started with Bush, too.
Let me bring you back to having kids, okay? We had a Super Bowl party at the new building that we, bought. We turned it into a nice little lounge, cigar lounge, which is going to be launched.
By the way,
it's going to be private. It's not going to be open to everybody, but it looks insane.
Looks ridiculous.
It looks insane, the inside of it. It's like a place. Anyways, I'm not even going to go into it, but it's looking forward to having some meetings there with people. But we're having a late night conversation. It's like 1:30 in the morning. We're talking to these different guys, okay? And we're having a conversation about the most sensitive topics. One of the guys is there. You know who he is. He's Muslim, but he's very conservative.
Yeah.
And he's a Republican. Okay. And then you got Democrats, Republicans. You got blacks, Asian. It doesn't matter. We have them all in that room at night. It's like 25 of us sitting having a good conversation together. And then the conversation comes about having kids, right? And I said, there's a reason why I don't, like the one person said, well, we just want to have one kid because I'm the only child and I just want to have one kid and that's what I want to do. And I said, that's the worst thing you can do. Okay. He says, why do you say that? I said, it's the same reason why I didn't just get one dog.
Yeah.
And he says, why? I said, if a dog doesn't have another dog to play with, you are the dog. I'm not a dog. I'm not a dog. I'm a freaking human being. The dog needs a dog as a friend so he can talk to. I don't want you to lick my legs. I don't want you to smell my butt. I don't want you to hump my legs. Go do it to another dog.
Yeah.
Right? So,
by the way, to the graphics team, can we just make a quote of Pat saying, I am not a dog?
Okay. Yeah. So the same reason why one shouldn't have just one kid. Unless if that's God's plan. If it's God's plan, it is what it is. Or you can't have another kid because you got lucky and got one. You can't get pregnant because you started very late. It is what it is. I don't recommend having only one kid. I don't recommend having only one dog. I don't recommend having only one anything, except for wife. Okay. And by the way, happy birthday, babe, and happy Valentine's
Happy birthday,
Day.
Jen.
It's her birthday today, and it's Valentine's Day.
I was going to mention that.
There you go.
There you go.
Happy birthday,
happy birthday,
Valentine's
Jen.
Day. Yes.
Happy Valentine's Day.
All right, so that's that part. So now kids. Then we start talking about kids. I said, if you make money and financially you can afford kids, you should keep having kids. Now, the room is filled with half men and half women. Obviously, the wives are not happy about this. It's like, who do you think you are? All this other. They love me. I love them. Yeah. We're like family. It's like you wouldn't. The level of camaraderie we have is at the highest level. But they'll say,
of course.
Come on, Pat, what are you talking about? So I'm telling you, if you have the resources and you're a leader and you're teaching people on reading books, developing the right values, the right principles, you should have kids. The problem is people who shouldn't have kids are having 7 kids. People who shouldn't have kids keep having kids. Can't afford it. They're not reading. They're not developing. They're not teaching. They're not making the society a better place. So we keep having kids by the people that are not necessarily developing the next layer of leaders in the future. So, but if somebody can't afford, like with this guy, if you're smart, if you're wise, if you can bring value, if you can teach somebody how to make money and be a better net positive to society, let's go.
Pull the
what
trigger.
I'm saying?
Jesus
let's
Christ.
Go. And by the way, you know what would happen if? And by the way, maybe there's a reason for it. But if I'm the president of the United States, I am telling you, we'd be having record-breaking years. The 4 years I'm president, America would have more babies than any 8-year period.
What would be your slogan? Like, how would you push that agenda?
My agenda is going to be make money, become a leader, then duplicate. Okay? Not just make babies to make babies. Make money, become a leader, then go duplicate. Not just go make babies. It would be stop Netflixing and chilling. Yeah. Start reading a damn book or watch documentaries. Create a criteria for yourself. For every one movie or show you get to watch, you have to watch 3 documentaries. So if you're going to watch a show or you're going to watch some movies, watch 3 documentaries. If you're going to read 1 romance novel, read 2 business books. If you're into, like, I know he's big on these 50 Shades of Grey type of, every time I buy his desk, he's got these romance books there, right?
I mean, it's just
he's
hot.
a hardcore romance.
Loves them.
For every one of those, read a couple business books.
Gotcha.
Read a couple biographies.
Yeah.
Go out there and start a side gig. Make some more money. Do something for yourself and your family. Become a leader in the company that you're building. Get yourself to a point where you are a big net positive to the company. Then, guess what? Make babies, and a lot of them, and don't stop, okay? This is like, people are probably listening to this and saying, Pat's lost his mind, okay? I bet 80% of the people that are listening to me right now saying, Pat's crazy, I don't know what he's on. He's only saying this because it's Valentine's Day today.
Yeah.
He's in the love mood. He's in the
hit him.
baby-making mood, or whatever you want to call
Let's
it.
get
Trust
it
me, if I had it my way, I would have 20 kids. I am telling you, I'd have 20 kids. I'd be the guy calling Casa D'Angelo saying, we'd like to make a reservation. How big is your party? Party of 24.
Shut it down.
Yeah.
We're
Party
coming.
of 24.
The Ben Davids are coming.
Got it. That last room is closed. I love it. Matter of fact, let's name this room the Ben David room. What do we need to do that?
Yeah.
I want that.
Yes.
Right now, obviously, we started late, but it is what it is. So again, if this was a source of inspiration for somebody listening to this, I didn't tell you to go have kids right now. I told you, go become a leader, make some money, have the right values and principles, then go. Okay? Go. Let somebody else use condoms. You say, moving forward, we're going on a 4-year run.
Yep.
We're going on a 6-year run, babe. Let's go make some babies. Okay? And by the way, if you're saying this is crazy, your competitors are doing this. Just so you know, America, your competition right now while you're talking shit, getting your 4-year degree in fine arts, they're making babies.
Yep.
They're making babies, and you're learning about fine arts. Yeah. That's what they're doing. They are making babies. Anyways, I'm a little upset about this. This is serious stuff right now.
Listen, campaign slogan 2024, PBD. Let's get it on, America. Okay?
But remember what I said. The whole concept is not
money,
out of wedlock. I'm not telling
Yeah.
you go not out of wedlock. Find somebody that can make a good mom or a good father and a good husband, and then go from there. But I'm telling you, if you can, if you have the ability, if you're a leader, let her rip. Let's go. Anyways, let's go into some topics. Yeah, this podcast has been a very weird.
It's Valentine's Day, Pat. I mean, it's your wife's birthday.
Guys.
You're
Very
allowed to have
frustrating.
an emotional moment. It's allowed.
It is what it is.
I never get emotional. I never show emotions. Everyone knows that
If
about
you
me.
think this is emotional, you have lost your mind. If you think this is emotional. Anyways, okay, let's go into some stories. Vinny, why don't you tell us what's going on with Houston? Matter of fact, can you have that explosion in Palestine, Ohio, so we can just see this and then how it's being spun and what we're being told about it? I don't think this is the one. That's the one in Hiroshima. That one right there. Just watch this. Go ahead, Vinny.
Well, I want to say one thing. Just like you said, with the spy, this past month, spy balloons. The Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that there's 3 objects taken down that were not spy balloons. So, and a lot of speculation. People are like, well, are they kind of distracting us? And there's going to be conspiracy theories. But the same token, Wednesday, tomorrow, the Epstein, all the files of everything with Jeff Epstein are supposed to be coming out. So everybody's playing the conspiracy thing. But I want to talk about Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation. Well, how many mistakes can this one guy do, from the supply chain crisis that we had, from the airports, the disaster during the holidays, to now this is the 3rd train. And you want to talk about how distracted people are with Rihanna and pregnancy? I walked into our office today, and Adam, you might have been one of the people. I was like, yo, did you hear about the train that dumped thousands of gallons of the vinyl chloride? You didn't really know about it.
No.
It's one of the ecological, like the disaster that it's caused. Apparently all this chemicals fell down, they made a decision to just burn it. And the look of what happened in the town, it looked like a nuclear blast.
Do we have the video?
There's definitely a video. Look, just
watch the video.
Yeah, show this.
Derailed Friday.
This is the initial.
Carrying hazardous materials.
Lower the audio.
Flames lit up the sky in northeastern Ohio. The evacuation order.
Just press. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Mind you, so 5,000 people evacuated. They're not really talking about it, Pat. They're saying that a guy let his dog out to get water. 5 minutes later, dog dropped dead. Miles and miles away from look at that. Tell me, what does that look like, Pat? That's like Chernobyl.
By the way, that's from a plane. Look
that's
what it
from
looks
an
like
airplane.
From a plane.
Yeah. So mind you, thousands of fish are dying, and this just goes to show you, bro. This is when you hire just for diversity, because he's the head of transportation, Pat. How many times can this guy drop the ball? The only reason Pete Buttigieg got that job, and I'm being straight up, is because he's a gay man. There's zero, Patrick, zero qualifications. Rob, go on his Wikipedia. What does Pete Buttigieg know about transportation? Mind you, this is the same guy
drives a car.
That 100%. Same guy during the supply chain crisis. Guess what he did? 2-month maternity leave with his husband.
Paternity leave. Have a little respect.
Whatever it was. For 2 months while we were going with that, for 2 months, he was gone. How many mistakes can happen and keep going? Bro, this is a disaster. You know where he was yesterday? He didn't make one mention of what's happening. This is really, really bad. Guess what he was talking about? Diversity in the workforce. He was saying that there's too many white construction workers. Bro, people, this is a cancerous thing. I saw vehicles that had the front of their bumpers at them. This stuff is like melting pieces of the plastic on the car. He was talking about how racism, he's on the America's racist tour. That's what he's doing. That's what America is worried about, is that. And he's the main guy. Same thing with Kamala. When you just hire because it's either race or their choice, that's what you get. And it's ridiculous.
And by the way, what happened? So this is. Are you following the story or no?
This is the first time I've seen it.
Nobody knows about it.
Yeah, but I want to hear more.
Yeah, so this is Houston. This is Palestine, Ohio. The next day it's South Carolina. If you have that one, this is South Carolina, or this is okay. Let's see this one. Do you have a clip of it, or what is it showing? Is it showing anything or no?
Just that train right there.
Yeah,
you can see it derailed in this
I
news
see it.
article.
I see it. Yeah.
What are the odds, Pat, of 3 separate trains, all derailing, all dropping toxic, like really, really, really bad chemicals, all in that span?
And by the way, do you know the county of Palestine, Ohio, is 70% Republicans? They voted 70% Trump in 2020. Just so you know that. I'm being serious with you. Yeah, Palestine, Ohio, is a very big Republican town. Yeah. So and by the way, I'm not going to that. So that could be just a purely coincidence on that taking place. But what are people saying? Is there a common threat amongst the 3? Ohio, South Carolina, and Houston, or no?
No, and from what I did, from the research that I did, some people are saying like maybe it's like a cyber attack where the communication is wrong, that the thing is going on the wrong track and falling off. And then, like I said earlier, Pat, it's like almost like a coincidence when people are like, something about Epstein is coming out. And mind you, did you know this, Pat? What's coming out about the Epstein situation, Rob, is they're going to release all his business partners, all the suspected predators, all his victims, all that is supposed to come out tomorrow. And a lot of people are saying that this is just like the UFO situation, because you know that, Pat. That's a fact. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, and I quote, 3 objects taken down this weekend are totally different from the Chinese spy balloon. So what is it? You can't tell us what are these F-16 shooting down, if they're even shooting down anything. Some people are saying it's a distraction. All this is a big distraction, so you don't know tomorrow. Tomorrow's a really, really big day. I want to see if it still happens, if the Epstein list is going to come out.
Well, let me ask you this, though. I mean, if the people behind it have so much power that they are able to derail trains and have UFOs flying around the United States, why wouldn't they have the power to not to release those documents or to destroy them?
So based on your research, Vincent.
Well, based on my research,
yes.
No, based on my research, it's going to come out. But if you have people distracted, mind you, people walked in. You were one of them. He was one of them. You guys had no idea that there was something, a controlled substance spewing into on American soil that's going to definitely cause cancer. It's killing animals. It's killing fish. Nobody really knows about it. So the more they have you thinking about UFOs, People know more about the spot. There's UFOs now. People think nobody knows about the Epstein thing. Did you guys even know that that's coming out tomorrow? Did you have any?
No,
idea?
absolutely
That's
zero.
So what I'm saying
yeah.
is that's a great. My point is put as much distraction as you can out there, because tomorrow when this comes out, nobody's gonna care. Just like when the JFK files are coming out, people are like, okay, we know. Just like the Twitter files, people get it. They're in Congress right now trying to hold these people accountable that were fired from Twitter. But you know what? People's attention span is quick. It'll go away.
Is this information going to be unredacted? Because I'd be quite surprised.
Rob, can you find out if the Epstein? I think it's just a list, Marian. I think it's gonna be a list of everybody that was a victim, everybody that he had business dealings with, everybody that was on this island. The whole list is supposed to come out tomorrow.
But how do we know everybody who should be on the list is on the list?
I mean,
I live in DC. I don't believe anything that comes out of,
I don't believe. What?
If I may.
Yes.
I just Googled some information. By the way, I don't think there's any correlation between train derailments and Jeffrey Epstein. But if you want to go down that path, I want you to research it. What I did do research is, I used to take the train to work from Miami to Boca for years. Mm-hmm. Years. Okay. It was a grind. This is part of the reason I have a car. And once a week, someone got hit by a train. Like, I'm an hour late to work today. I thought I'd get there early. No, there's a train issue. It's a train issue. So as I'm hearing more about these train issues, I'm like, well, let me see how common these things are. Do your research beyond this. It says, how many train derailments are in the U.S. each year? It says, while fatalities from train derailments are rare, derailments themselves are actually quite common. Since 1990, the first year that they began tracking train derailments and injuries on a yearly basis up to 2021, there have been 54,000 accidents in which a train derailed. That's an average of 1,700 train derailments per year. So it seems to be freaking common. Now, obviously, I'm going to assume that some of them are minor.
Of course.
Some of them are major.
Of course.
These seem to be major.
Yeah.
But I want you to go deeper on this.
Okay, but here's my thing.
Yeah.
Google how many times in 1 month, less than a month, 3 trains dropping hundreds of thousands. No, hold on. That's what I'm saying is.
Yeah, no.
That is this is not a stat on Google. This is ridiculous.
We're in agreement that some
100%.
weird shit is happening.
Oh yeah, and by the way, a derailment that you're talking about could be like it hit another train.
No doubt.
But my thing is this. I can have an opinion, and my opinion is this past month from spy balloon, mind you, NORAD. I don't know what the hell what's going on. They have no idea. This spy balloon they didn't track it till it came over Canada and hit us. But guess what? If it's a Santa Claus tracker, they're like, hey, it's coming over a lot. They know where the Santa Claus tracker is. They don't know where the goddamn Chinese spy balloons are. And I'm shocked that we can even call it a Chinese spy balloon, because it's racist to even say that this thing is coming from over. No, I mean it's funny, but it's not funny. I think it's a serious thing. Mind you, the thing is still burning. That 5,000 person city is evacuated, and those people are making videos and they're complaining, bro, because they're making like it's not a big deal. Why isn't the federal government?
So Vinny, tie it all together for me. What's happening?
I'm tying it all together in that when you have the Secretary of Transportation on a tour telling people about how there's lack of diversity, why isn't he talking? The first thing he should be talking about is this problem. This isn't just, okay, they spilled some gas and it's going to disappear. It's burning, and these people are getting infected, and it's cancerous shit.
I think your point is Pete Buttigieg has some explaining to do.
100%, but they'll never hold him accountable, bro. He has no business being the head of transportation. She has no. Why is she even speaking? The White House press secretary, Kamala Harris, they're horrible at their job, but nobody holds them accountable. You're not good at your job. If Pete Buttigieg worked at McDonald's and he did that many mistakes, he would have been gone on the second fry fuck up.
Let me ask a question. So, out of all the things, and by the way, Pete Buttigieg is not qualified for this job
at all.
I mean, you know he's not qualified for this job. That deal was made that Tuesday or whatever the day was when himself, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie, everybody dropped out, and they said Joe Biden's going to be the candidate. And that the way that deal was broken. Okay, I'll step down if you give me XYZ job. Hey, since you like driving Teslas, you're the transportation guy. Kamala, you're going to be this, and you're going to do this, and I don't even know if he drives a Tesla. He may drive a Prius, for I know. He may drive a Ford Focus. But all I'm saying is he got a job for the hell of it. So let's set aside Pete Buttigieg here with what he's doing. He's going to be one of their superstars, just so you know. He's
100%.
a superstar for the left.
Yeah.
sometimes when things like this happen, you have to also know, like, you're distracting the audience, which is the American people, from a real issue that is going on. If we go and we think about the last 30 days or the last 2 weeks, what's really been the biggest story that could hit, that really could, some shit could go down? All right. For example, Nord Stream pipeline.
I'm happy you brought that up.
You look at Nord Stream pipeline, the story that was written by the two-time Pulitzer Prize winner, Hirsch, what's his first name? Seymour Hirsch, who wrote this. And by the way, he's had some stories that have worked against him.
Whatever.
We're not sitting here, we have to give that as well.
Yeah,
He's got a couple stories that he did that actually didn't end up, but he made some claims years ago that was actually right. Mm-hmm. And he's known for being the guy that does great investigative journalism, which is what their job is supposed to be. And the whole story is about what? The fact that U.S. was behind Nord Stream pipeline. Why would Russia do this to themselves when they own 50.1% of it?
Yep.
It's like me owning a business for 50.1% of the business, and I blow it up myself, and I need the money, and I'm in the middle of a war with a country called Ukraine that used to be my land, and I need as much resources as possible to fund this war. And yeah, let me go blow up my own Nord Stream pipeline. No one believes that's possible. We know that lady that came out and texted and says, done,
Finished, yeah.
Yeah, finished. And then we also know when Joe Biden, do you have the clip of what Joe Biden said about the Nord Stream pipeline when he gave the answer, and the lady's like, well, how do you know that? How are you so certain?
Yeah.
Do you remember his answer?
Yeah,
Like, just trust me.
Just trust me.
I know. So no one's touching this. So why is this so important? Why is this so, if you can play this clip.
And Pat, can you give me context? Because you're saying, what that guy's saying is that Navy SEALs went in there, underwater frogmen, and blew up that pipeline.
Yeah,
that's what he was saying.
So why
we're going to be honest with each other.
I'll read the article. So
yeah, please.
I'll read the article. So Pulitzer Prize winning Seymour Hirsch has alleged U.S. Navy divers. If you have the New York Post story, if you don't have it, I'll text it to you right now, Robin. You can pull it up. But I'm going to read it myself while we're going through this. So the story that he hang on.
And when it's Navy divers, they're talking about Navy SEALs.
So U.S. Navy divers laid bombs that destroyed the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline under the Baltic Sea last September, drawn a denial from Pentagon Wednesday. Hirsch, who scooped journalism top awards from 5 decades ago for exposing the My Lai massacre of Vietnamese civilians by U.S. troops in 1968, cited an unnamed source in reporting on Substack that Americans planted remotely triggered explosive that wrecked three of the four pipelines built to carry natural gas from Russia to Europe. Hirsch, 85, went to claim that the Navy conducted an operation under cover of a NATO maritime exercise called Baltops 22. I don't know if you have the story. Baltops 22. In a short statement, Pentagon spokesman, Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Garen Garn told the Post the United States was not involved in a Nord Stream explosion, reiterating the Defense Department's response to the same question in October. Swedish officials suspected the blasts were the result of gross sabotage, and some Western officials were quick to blame the attacks on Moscow. Do you realize how dumb, if you actually believe for somebody, like say, Elon Musk, he himself brought down Tesla and Twitter because he just kind of felt like it, right? And when he owned 51% of it, if he did, okay, and it blocked its gas supplies to Europe in response to sanctions over last year's invasion to Ukraine. These are deliberate actions, not an accident, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said at the time. The situation is as serious as it gets. Anyways, so these are the claims that he's making, okay? And then Biden gets up and he's asked the question, if he can find this clip, because all of this is coming down to the ICBM that just U.S. accidentally practiced just 3 days ago, launching, and U.S.'s government, Pentagon, is telling everybody to get out of Russia at a time like this. So do you have the clip of what he says? Is this the one? Okay, press.
I found a clip from Tucker's show where I think that's it.
Let's hear it. So this is her and him. Press both of them. Play both of them, yeah. So this is what she says.
At the State Department, the number 2 of the State Department.
Watch
and
this.
Joe Biden threatened to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. Watch.
I want to be clear with you today. if Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
What does that even mean?
So then the pipe.
Yeah. What do you mean? I promise.
Yeah.
We will be able to do that.
Yeah, you send two frogmen in there, and that's it.
What interest does Russia have to do that? Right. Think about the interest of Russia. Okay. What interest do they have to do that? So, all right. So I asked the question from you earlier. Is this a distraction? These trains? Are these balloons a distractions? Like, hey, look over here. Oh shit, we're dealing with something really big here. Here's a story for you.
Nothing to see here.
U.S. test launches ICBM into Pacific as part of nuclear deterrence mission. Okay, this is U.S. News and World Report. Okay, the U.S. Air Force test launched an unarmed intercontinental ballistic missile, the Minuteman III, into the Pacific Ocean, claiming the launch was a routine and aimed at reassuring allies. Of course, it's just a routine. Of course, the timing is a little crazy, but don't worry, people. It's just routine. Yeah. The Air Force Global Strike Command asserted the test was intended to demonstrate that the United States nuclear deterrent is safe, secure, and reliable and effective to deter 21st century threats. The English language Global Times, China's state-run newspaper, has suggested China's developing its nuclear arsenal faster than the U.S., which possesses a Cold War-era stockpile that is aging. And North Korea was also paraded its large-ever collection of nuclear missiles. And Russia has deployed a warship with hypersonic nuclear warheads into intercontinental waters near the U.S. These developments have alarmed European nations, which are hesitant to supply potent weapons to Ukraine. Obviously, you know how you go to like an air show and they're just kind of entertaining you? This is all they're doing, guys. Yeah. Folks, if you're listening to this, it's just simply a form of entertainment for the American people.
And what a great timing, right, Pat? And mind you, did anybody know that we're testing? Like, because mind you, I worked at a nuclear missile base in Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana, where this Chinese spy balloon was just hovering and not collecting data. It was just flying around.
And then somehow, some way, and then I'll pause you and I'll turn it over to you guys, and I'll, if you can go to this NPR story while all this stuff is going on, again, NPR is not Fox News.
It's not.
This is
CNN.
not Breitbart. This is not CNN. This is NPR. Mm-hmm. NPR is left-leaning, government-funded media. So you have to realize who NPR is, okay? The U.S. is urging Americans to leave Russia immediately due to security risks. The U.S. Embassy in Moscow is urging Americans to leave Russia immediately due to security risks. Amid the war in Ukraine, the U.S. Embassy in Moscow warned the unpredictable consequences of the war in Ukraine and said that the U.S. Russian citizen is particular risk being forcibly conscripted into Russia's armed forces. The embassy also cautioned that Americans in general face potential harassment or wrongful detention by Russian security services. The Kremlin shrugged off calls of Americans to leave the country as not new. Next week will mark 1 year since Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24, 2022. So, again, maybe these, trains, maybe these, balloons. It's very easy to distract kids with balloons. I got 3 balloons at the top. That's all Brooklyn sees in the house.
She loves them.
The same way you can distract kids with balloons is the same way you distract adults with balloons. That could be the case. Again, I am purely speculating. I don't have an insider person telling me anything. I'm purely speculating.
But Pat, when's the last time this much, besides 9/11 and all the crazy stuff that we went through, when's the last time you heard about 3 trains like this?
Yeah.
UFOs, because that's what the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, 3 unidentified flying objects, a Chinese spy balloon that's just coming over. They're shooting down these things that they won't give us any explanation of what they are. They're not telling us about this until Americans were recording it and going, yo, what is that? Then they have to explain themselves. But we have the highest defense budget in the world. No, I was in the United States Air Force. I can tell you, nothing is in the air unless we know that it's in the air. But All of a sudden, we're letting them come in. The UFOs are happening. 3 trains are dumping all this stuff. The stuff, it's just so much is going on. I do want to know what people, like, what do you think? What do you think there's anything that they're trying to distract us in? Or you just think it's just, this is just America and shit happens and it's just happening for...
Regarding
I'm just saying everything. This is a crazy time, especially, and with the Nord Stream pipeline and everything that's happening.
I'll address the Chinese weather balloon stuff right there. I've watched a lot of content on it, and I think the pervasive view is that we have a lot more questions than answers. So I think that there's going to be the Senate judiciary hearings on whatever's going to come up, the accountability. Like, we're going to find out what the hell's going on here. I don't think this is going to lead to any sort of hot war with China. I think we can pump the brakes on that. I think there's no debate that China is our I don't want to use the word enemy.
Adversary?
Adversary, sure. Okay. So there's certainly an adversary role. But I do want to focus on the Nord Stream 2 because there was 2 schools of thought. Was it Putin? Why would Putin do this? Putin, with his amazing sense of humor, did make a joke about 6 months ago when winter was starting.
Yeah.
And it was essentially, he was telling a story about a German boy speaking to his father about, why do the Russians hate us? Oh, they don't want us to be warm, winter. It wasn't a very funny joke. Essentially, he was basically saying, why are we so cold here in Germany? Because the world wants the Russians to suffer. And he's like, well, are we Russians? Because we're suffering is essentially what the premise was. So from the Putin state of mind, he's like, if we do this, we're going to make Europe pay. By the way, Europe has wholeheartedly embraced the war in Ukraine. Every single EU nation is wholeheartedly on Team Ukraine.
Of course.
No debate there. The entire EU. You'll speak about this probably much more eloquently than I. What I would say is this. From a non-political standpoint, if the U.S. is at war with Russia, again, non-politically, wouldn't it kind of make sense to blow up the fucking Nord Stream to limit their ability to pump out oil and drive revenue? Mm-hmm. So whether you like Biden, hate Biden, think he's an old senile man, whether he literally was a gaffe and let one go, if this were conventional warfare and we blew up our enemy's pipeline, we would all secretly be like, hey, good job over here. Great job, America.
Yeah.
But in this political climate, we're like, what an idiot. Why would he? So I don't necessarily, if we did do it, and we sent, what do you call them, frogmen?
Frogmen, 100%.
Okay, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Putting their,
they're not frogs.
Yeah.
They're amphibious.
I would say, all right, well, I guess we're pretty calculated here at the military. But you're from a former USSR, Czechoslovakia.
Well, not exactly from former USSR.
No, why not?
The bloc,
former,
the empire, yes, the Soviet Empire.
Eastern Bloc.
Correct.
Yes, so I'm not wrong here. What's your take on what's going on? By the way, just so we're clear here, do you know the death toll? If you know it, just let the audience guess. Do you know the death toll of the current amount of Russians and Ukrainians that have died in the last year?
Both combined.
Total combined. Do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
Take a wild guess.
500,000.
500,000. Do you know how many that is in a year to die? 500,000.
Is that am I right?
No, but just keep in mind in the entire U.S. war in Vietnam, I think we had 50,000 casualties in 6 years, or whatever it was. Do you know the number?
I have no. I just ran.
I thought it was.
You wrote how much?
200,000 each. I thought
200,000 each.
The Russians have lost 200,000 soldiers, and Ukrainians almost 100,000.
So I'm kind of close.
According to Norwegian TV on January 22nd, General Erik Kristofferson, obviously we have big fans of Norway here. We trust their research, Kai.
Yeah.
Norway's defense estimates that over 180,000 have been killed in Ukraine and 100,000 Russians have been killed in Ukraine. I think something that we're forgetting about, because we were all in the rah-rah, sis, boom, bah, behind Ukraine. All right, there's a war. This is a year ago. Support Ukraine. What is actually happening is there a staggering amount of deaths and just overall just destruction going on there. There's a full-on war there.
There's a war.
In America, we're like, hey, support Ukraine, donate, tip an extra $1.
I wear a flag on my shirt.
No, people are fucking dying.
Oh, yeah.
You don't think that there's 100,000, 200,000 Russian moms that are crying their eyes out?
What are your thoughts on this, Marion?
Yeah, great point. I didn't know it was that much. That's nuts.
Well, I certainly don't think that the Europeans are acting as though Russia is a serious threat to the peace and stability in Europe. The United States has been heroic in the amount of hardware that the United States has been providing to Ukraine, not to mention budgetary support. But it shows you just how weak the European countries are. They've been relying on the United States for support, for defense, since the establishment of NATO in the 1940s. They constantly refuse to meet their targets in terms of spending on defense, and they've been very cheap when it comes to supporting the Ukrainians. They've been relying on the United States. The Brits have done a fair bit. The French are dragging their feet, Germans even more so. As far as the Spanish and the Portuguese are concerned, I don't even know if they are aware there's a war going on. Yeah. So I would love to see the Europeans actually stepping up, and if they feel that Russia is really an existential threat to Europe, that they should do their bit rather than constantly rely on the United States.
Clearly, it's the countries that, Finland, Poland, that are surrounding Ukraine.
The Poles understand what Russians can do when they take over your country.
Of course. They've seen it.
And the same with the Baltic countries.
Versus the Portuguese and the Spanish, they're just like siesta time.
And Pat, this goes to me like with all this stuff, and I'm not trying to make it political, but I mean we're talking politics with everything that's going wrong here as we're seeing it, the wars that we're getting involved with. China being able to literally from COVID to what they're doing now, do whatever they want and get away with it. Because to me personally, the administration, the president, Biden, weak as hell. I would much rather, me personally, my opinion is my thought, I would much rather go back to 2 years ago when the only thing hurting in this country was people's feelings, not the country itself. I'm being real. 2 years ago, people were like, hey, he said something mean. None of this shit would have been happening during Trump. I put my money where my mouth is. You think a balloon spying would just be flying over and all this shit would be happening with China? It's the same guy that tried to hold China accountable, and just because he was like, oh, this is a China virus. You can't. It's racism. China's doing whatever the hell they want. We owe them all this freaking money. Heroin, I saw a documentary where a homeless guy, very well spoken, and he was homeless, but whatever. He's like, look what China's doing. He goes, heroin's gone. He goes, fentanyl is the number one thing coming here from China. They're making their money, all right, and they're killing Americans. So it's a win-win situation for China. Who's holding them accountable? All these hearings, all these judicial. I'm watching this shit right now with Twitter. None of those guys are going to get in trouble. None of them are going to go to jail. They're going to investigate Fauci. Fauci's untouchable. He'll never, mark my words, never, none of them will ever see jail. Ever, period. They're going to go in front. Jim Jordan will yell at them. Rand Paul will yell at them. Then what? What's going to happen? No, I'm being real. What happens, Pat?
There's a total lack of accountability in D.C. Nobody ever gets
1,000%. That's it.
We didn't start in this country with an aristocracy, but now we have one in Washington, D.C. It's called the permanent bureaucracy. Yep. It doesn't matter how much you suck at your job. You get promoted. You are basically unfireable.
Exactly.
The worst that can happen to you is that you get reassigned to a different department. You are pampered. You earn a lot of money. You barely have to go to work. It's a nice job if you can get it.
I wish I could get in.
I have no desire to get in. Okay.
Pat's not going to get in.
Pat, take us out on maybe a more optimistic note.
I got 1 minute.
Yeah.
Something happened.
I have nothing to say. Yeah. Take us out on a more the future looks bright.
Have babies.
Even Elon Musk said it. We're trying to have babies
in the
Valentine's
last
Day.
100 years.
Go ahead.
We've overcome the Great Depression. We've overcome World War I. 2, a president assassination, an attempt president assassination, an assassination of MLK, assassination of RFK, 9/11. We've overcome a lot of things, is what we've overcome. I think what is awesome about seasons like this is seeing leaders rising up. Leaders don't wake up during times of peace, unfortunately. Leaders typically are identified and step up during times of war, times of crisis, times of uncertainty, times of fear. I believe the man upstairs is looking down right now saying, okay, this is the next challenge that's being faced. Let's see what kind of leaders are going to rise up. And your job and my job is to start off with our family first. Within your household, be the leader. Within the company that you're working at, choose to be a leader amongst your peers. Choose to be a leader amongst your community, your city. Choose to be a leader amongst your church. If you do go to anything, choose to be a leader. If we choose to be leaders, the other day I was having a conversation with Dylan. We're driving a car, and I'm letting him watch the video of Dana White, where he says, this is the season of savages. And I had him watch it, and he says, if you're a savage, if you're remotely a savage, you're going to can kill everybody in this generation. If you're remotely a savage. Him and Cardone having a conversation. It's actually a very good one. And Cardone says, I don't care what people say. In every generation, there's a savage. He says, yes. And then I look at Dylan, and I'm saying, hey, what do you think you're a savage? He says, Dad, I'm a savage. I said, Sonny, you think you're a savage? He says, I'm a savage as well. I said, you have the David blood. You don't have a choice. You're a savage, okay? And he says, but Dad, goes back to the same conversation he has. But Dad, you keep saying that David last name is a special last name. You're just saying that. That's not true. I said, the only thing that matters is for us to believe it.
100%.
Nothing else matters. It's our job to lead our people. I feel like that about my background. I feel like that about America. I feel like that about valuetainment. I feel like that about capitalism. I feel like that about insurance. I feel like that about anything you represent. You ought to have that kind of respect, determination, confidence in. So if you choose to lead, things are going to work out. Does it mean we're going to go through some... I think something weird is going on. I think some weird shit's going to happen. But, just like, history repeats itself, leaders are going to rise up. That's what's going to happen at the end of the day. It's a season... We're having a conversation with a couple guys in the cigar lounge. One guy says, what topic should be off limits? You know what I told him? I said, no topic should be off limits to discuss today at a dinner or family setting. It's our approach that needs to improve.
I agree.
You can talk any topic. Let's learn our approach to make it a little bit more comfortable for all of us to have a conversation together. Anyways, Marian, thanks for coming out. The link to the book, Superabundance, is going to be at the bottom, both in the chat and the description. If you haven't ordered it yet, go order it. Superabundance, Marian Tupy, back at it for the second time. Marian, thanks for coming out. Gang, take care. Are we doing another podcast this week, Rob, or no?
Yes, Friday with Jimmy Dore.
Friday with Jimmy Dore. Perfect. We'll see you guys there. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye.